All right,
Okay.
another guy who does everything by himself.
Pretty much.
Well, with the few collaborators,
Yeah.
right, famously, but yes, mostly himself, and that somebody is Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails, and we're gonna be doing the Fragile. But first, Matt is going to be giving us the numbers.
Yep. So The Fragile by Nine Inch Nails comes in at number 111 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 13 in 1999, number 653 of all time. It's Nine Inch Nails' third highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, behind 1989's Pretty Hate Machine and 1994's Downward Spiral, both albums that we covered in previous episodes. The Fragile did not make Rolling Stone's list. 0 for 4 tonight for Rolling Stone with the albums that we're covering. And Nine Inch Nails ranked number 115 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
So we've done a full Nine Inch Nails biography before when we covered way back Pretty Hate Machine. We did it then, and then we expanded on it when we did the Downward Spiral. So I will focus on so go back and listen to them, first of all, and then afterwards come back and I'll tell you what was going on between 1994, when the Downward Spiral was released, and when this album came out, 1999. What happened was the band went on a very chaotic tour in support of the Downward Spiral, where they played everywhere from Woodstock 94, Caked in Mud, to all over the world. They also released a very well-received remix album called Further Down the Spiral, which was a remix of all of the Downward Spiral songs. It was lots of contributors on that one. Dave Navarro, Aphex Twin, Rick Rubin were involved in that. I've actually never heard that remix album, but it whets my appetite a little bit there. So during that tour, they played around with the visual aspect of things, which became a big part of what Trent Reznor wanted to incorporate into the overall ethic, ethos, kind of, I think, of Nine Inch Nails performance art, I'd say. The setup had like dirty curtains that got risen and lowered for different visuals that were played. They covered themselves in cornstarch at different times, and the shows were kind of encouraged to be, highly energetic, like catharsis type scenarios. As you might imagine, when you're running with that type of energy, it's a lot like going on. And it took 5 years for this album to come out. It was actually recorded between 1997 and 1999. So over a 2-year period that was going on. And that was due to a variety of things going on in Trent Reznor's life. He is a famous perfectionist in the studio. So he was struggling with balancing ideas and finalizing work. He had writer's block, so he was struggling, especially lyrically, to come up with like lyrical representations. And he even says that's why a lot of this album is musical, because he was having a hard time synthesizing like what he was feeling into lyrics. And he also was struggling with addiction, which is actually one of many themes, content-wise, in the lyrics on this album. This album, lyrically, Trent Reznor said, like, revisits some of the themes from Downward Spiral, alienation, depression, the mix of the dark side of life, and the I guess at times like a counterbalance, like normal life, like what's normal, what's abnormal. And the pull quote I have right here from Trent Reznor is, "The Fragile was an album based in a lot of fear because I was afraid as fuck about what was happening to me. That's why there aren't a lot of lyrics on that record. I couldn't fucking think. An unimaginable amount of effort went into that record in a very unfocused way." So that gives you a little bit of the headspace that he was in. But eventually he was able to focus it into a double album. So I guess maybe he didn't focus with the double album, because like, instead of focusing, I'm just going to put it all out there. Reznor did not think the album was going to be well received because he said that he thought it would be irritating to people because it's not traditional Nine Inch Nails. He described it as, think of the most ridiculous music you could ever imagine with nursery rhymes over the top of it. A bunch of pop songs. So that was his thought on what this album sounded like, which is an interesting take, like insight into his mind of how he thought of this album. And there were things that he was going for in terms of incorporating into the sound, most notably the things that he tried to expand out his electronic music palette in terms of what he went into, and he did want to build in a little bit more ambient sounds and choices in the album. So those were intentional. But instead of going long bio for a revisit, I want to talk about this album. So I'm curious to see what you guys thought about it because it definitely shares themes with Downward Spiral. And even Pretty Hate Machine, but it's a very different album as well. An album that I know Matt knows very well, and it's an album that I know very well. Josh, though, let's get your take first.
Yeah, an album I didn't know, as I have said for all of the Nine Inch Nails thus far, and I mean, count me as a Nine Inch Nails fan because I really like this album. Like, I get what he's saying. I guess it sounds, a little different than the previous albums. There is kind of a more, I don't know, in some ways there's a lighter quality to this, but it's still like dark and kind of moody in tone, and there's still like kind of the foundational Nine Inch Nails sound to it. I picked up on the kind of more ambient sound. There is a way, in some ways too, or parts of the album are more stripped down because oftentimes it's just like him and a piano, and it's like instrumental almost in some ways, but then it like it kind of ramps back up in other tracks and like grabs you with with that like chaotic cacophony of noise that kind of, I think many people think of as like Nine Inch Nails kind of aesthetic. This album, despite being a double album, I think I think I just find it very compelling. Like I have all of the Nine Inch Nails, the two Nine Inch Nails albums that we've talked about previously. I like in some ways too, I feel like the second album is more kind of more approachable, or it like kind of becomes more electronic as it goes along, and so like more synths and like more kind of maybe like more ambient as well. The I mean, I liked many of the tracks on this feel like kind of more almost like pop oriented, or more that could be played as like singles as well. And so that's interesting. I think he's, despite being so kind of like moody or like creatively conflicted, or however he said struggling to make the album, I think he still knows how to like kind of craft songs and make them listenable and like kind of appealing to people, or to at least certain people. We're in This Together would be an example of like a single as well. And he throws in a female singer as well on La Mer. I thought that was kind of an interesting deviation, but I found that really compelling as well. That song Pilgrimage is really interesting. It sounds like crowds cheering. It has kind of this historical epic feel to it, or like a Colosseum or something like that, or Spartacus. I thought that was really good. He still has kind of that pain delivery as well. In certain songs, like on the track The Fragile, he just kind of repeats, "I won't let you fall apart." So it's kind of got that pained emotional feel, like that moody, introspective pain that we saw on the previous two albums. But yeah, I'm just a real fan at this point, and I feel like I can kind of, like you guys with other albums or types of music, like Dream Pop comes to mind, or maybe some of the noise rock and stuff. I just get on the wavelength and kind of respond to this almost immediately. And it also kind of, I think the thing with Nine Inch Nails too is also kind of has this like, I don't know, like techno dance quality to it at times. I mean, Pretty Hate Machine was like that a lot more than Downward Spiral, but that's always kind of here. I saw the Tron Ares movie recently, and Nine Inch Nails does the soundtrack for that. And that is by far the best part of the movie. And that through line continues, to present day. It's got this like pulsing kind of throbbing beat to it. And it just kind of like always works. And whatever he does in Nine Inch Nails does that like, that's like the special magic sauce. So yeah, this is a thumbs up for me. It's the one that we talked about a lot of good albums this week, but this is the one that like, I think, I enjoyed re-listening to and kind of like delving into the most this week.
Yeah, so this, as John mentioned, I do know this album quite well. I bought this right around the time that it came out, and I can't honestly say why I bought it, because I did the Downward Spiral. I liked some of the songs off of it. I did like Closer, but I remember hearing that here and there, and just being like a little scared, like just this is a lot, like I don't know if this is for me, and then for some reason, I don't know if it was just like maybe I just met enough people that talked about how much they liked them, and those were people that I respected their taste in music, and I don't know, I was visiting my brother in Philadelphia, and we were in a record store, and I'm like, I think I'm gonna get this, and I remember he looked at me and he goes, do you know what you're getting into? Like that, and I was like, well, we'll find out, right? So I remember this is definitely one of those records that I was kind of like very, I don't know, I like went out on a limb, and I was early on, I was like, this isn't as harsh as I thought it would be, right? And it's certainly, when you kind of compare it to the Downward Spiral, this is, that you can hear that this is a more introspective, Trent Reznor, that this is something that is in some ways more palatable and more inviting. Sonically, it's got like, it does have more ambient sounds. It's not, as in your face maybe as Pretty Hate Machine or the Downward Spiral, and was a little bit more, to the point where I would say, like, if I was to introduce somebody to Nine Inch Nails, I might start here, to be honest, even though it's a double album. But I think that this is an easier entry point to them than maybe the Downward Spiral. Just as the more I think about it, and in listening to it these past couple weeks, but revisiting it this time around, I love this. This is a fantastic album, and it's just it's varied, it's catchy, right? There's parts where, like you said, where it's ambient, and I never really thought about that before. The fact that there's not as many lyrics on this, that there's plenty of instrumental songs, and even some of the songs where there are lyrics, it's kind of it's sparse, a little bit more sparse than maybe normal. And I never really thought of that, or thought as like, why I don't know. I don't think like that. I just kind of, with art, I take what they're presenting and I just look at it as is. It's like the total opposite of probably how John does it, because John's like asking all these questions and trying to put things in context of what's going on. And I'm just like, what's going on? Just, what are you doing? Just like, I'm just here taking what you're giving me, so I don't really expand upon it that much. But I think that this, for an album that's, side, disc 1 is 54 minutes, disc 2, 48 minutes, and almost an hour and 45 minutes in total. It's a lot, right? Mm-hmm. But I never get bored with this record. It's not like I listen to this and I go, all right, what next song? Like, I find each song very appealing. I find it engaging. I like how it flows. There's stuff that is very much, loud, like the industrial guitar sound, and there's songs that's more like just ambient and quiet, right? And it flows pretty well. And it's a great sounding record. Yes, it's dark. Like, it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's happy, although there's some bright spots in it. Some of the guitar parts, like We're in This Together, that chorus is kind of like, it's a little bit more, I guess, upbeat, but it's like a warmer sound, than maybe some of the other stuff that he has done before. But yeah, and then like a song like Complications, kind of like this house dance song, so it's really kind of hitting a lot of different areas of electronic music, of industrial rock, and it's still very much Trent Reznor, right? Still very much Nine Inch Nails, and it's its own thing. You definitely see the Bowie in here, right? Like the the Brian Eno kind of ambient type sounds. And so it's no surprise that I think Bowie at some point around this time was collaborating with Trent Reznor in some way, shape, or form. But they definitely seem like very,
Reznor said that like Low is one of his favorite albums ever.
Yeah, that totally. And, and knowing that record after covering it here, it's like, yeah, very much, because like the whole second half of Low, second side of Low was like all like kind of instrumental, experimental electronic music. So, and that's very much here. So you can see, that coming across. But yeah, this is an album. It's even though I really like it, I think that there's times where you're more in a mood to hear this, right, or something. And and that's the story, right? That maybe we've talked about it before. I don't know if you want to tell it, John, or I can, but yeah, there's a very specific moment of of knowing that John needed some space. When
I believe The Wretched was the song you walked into me listening to at the time too. Yeah, so real good one. Yeah,
came home and John's on the couch and the lights are off and he's just like got a comforter over top of him and he's listening to this record, and I was like, I don't know what's going on with John right now, but John needs some space, so I'm gonna go to my room and just kind of like let him be. But I think later on I checked in. I'm like, you okay, man? Do we need to talk? So I think it was just John just having one of those days. But I'm glad you like this, Josh. I do remember the first I played the Downward Spiral for you, and you were just like, I'm not right.
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, that kind of grabs you. But this I still feel I kind of feel that this is a good entry point to Nine Inch Nails. That it's a little bit more accessible, not as in your or loud or what have you. But it's excellent thinking about listening to this stuff. Like it's quite singular an artist, Trent Reznor, how important of a band Nine Inch Nails are, and it's an elite record. It's fantastic. Big thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I love this album. Yeah, the story of that day with the album was I came home and it was not a bad day, but it was just one of those days that took a lot of energy out of me. And I have a weird thing where sometimes, like when I'm relaxing, I actually like to listen to chaotic music, and oddly kind of calms me down weirdly. I don't know how to describe it. So it's almost like I pour my energy into the chaotic music, if that makes sense. And then it kind of like evens. It's almost like ADHD medication, right? Where they think it's like a depressant, but it's actually a stimulant, you know what I mean? And kind of like that would be how I'd describe it. So, so that was what's going on there. And I was okay, Matt, as much as you're going to be. Yeah. So, but yeah, it does make me laugh because I think back on it, and you walked in when my favorite song on this album actually came on, like The Wretched, which is just a absolutely like terrifying song in some ways. And I probably undersold, by the way. Like Trent Reznor was like deep in the throes of drug addiction. In fact, in 2000, he had the moment that kind of got him pretty much clean, which was after his grandmother died, where I think it was in about like 96 or 97 before this. His grandmother, who basically raised him, died. And it was a very traumatic event for him. And he began using cocaine and alcohol and things. And that was basically the what was going on, right, in his life, like a private addiction that was like overwhelming, where, was he able to... basically, was he able to create in that space? And it was hard for him to do that. And actually, after this, he tells the story in 2000, I guess he was on tour in Europe, and he thought he had bought some cocaine, but it actually ended up being black tar heroin with fentanyl in it. And he basically almost died of an overdose. And basically that was when it's like, shit, I have to, clean up. And someone asked him to like have a drink in 2005. He's like, I know if I have a drink, I'll die, basically. You know what I mean? Because like basically saying that's what it'll lead to. And so there's always been that sort of that like introspection, but you can't help but think of other albums that are just like torturous in sound, that were created in tumult. Like I always think of Pornography by The Cure, right, where Robert Smith basically is like, I am having a nervous breakdown, or like Lane State, like Dirt by Alice in Chains. And there's just those albums that sound like you can't create that album unless your life is tumultuous, right? Like you can't fake that, right? That level of intensity. And that's what you get on this album. This album is just, it's different than the Downward Spiral. Downward Spiral is this very almost violent, dark, bleak album. Like this album's bleak too, but this is like, I'm sort of being corroded, like from the inside type, loathing, there's a nihilism to all of 90s 90s like Nine Inch Nails, right? Like a blackness to it, kind of like a nihilism would be the sound of what I'd say, but it's that weird nihilism where there's a siren's call to it as well, where it's like it's a very seductive, let's throw it all away type of vibe, I think, sociologically. And then you get to like what the music sounds like. And you really, for my money, what Trent Reznor does with electronic music sort of represents like the peak of what you can do with it, because he is able to take it in so many different directions. He's able to make this beautifully produced music, which is a hallmark of electronic music, but he's able to put so many feelings into electronic music, which is hard to do because it's easy to do cold, right? In electronic music or robotic, or, you know, even the like happy feelings like within it can be sort of like trite if done the wrong way. And he manages to do the whole emotional spectrum with the choices he makes, and the introduction of space into his sound here on this sweeping, 1 hour, 50-minute, investment, because that's what this is. This is an event. Even Trent Reznor's like, I probably should have done this as 2 albums. I think Matt actually, he says, like, I should have done it like Radiohead with like Kid A and Amnesiac, right? Where they recorded them at the same time and then spaced them. He's like, that probably was the approach I should have taken. But, in true Trent Reznor fashion, he's like, but, fuck it. Kind of like, it happens. So I can't do it.
Yeah, it's out there. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and so in knowing that, like, I listened to this as a full piece, right? And then I listened to it as the 2 albums spaced apart and stuff. And I do think that the albums are different, right? Like, I think the first album is more aggressive and in your face. There's more lyrics, I think, on that one. The second one, I feel like, is more contemplative, almost like the coming down from the aggression and the counterbalance to it. And so I noticed it when I listened to it entirely, but like, you definitely get the feel that both of the albums sort of represent different versions of Tumult, I would say, in terms of how it's expressed. But really, really good. Like, just there's an emotional resonance that I get when I listen to the music that Trent Reznor makes in Nine Inch Nails, that I always notice who I connect with emotionally in music is one of my favorite things about music, right? Is it pushes me into a lane that isn't always easy for me to express. But to do that in electronic music, I just think the degree of difficulty is higher for my personal palate, and for him to consistently deliver on that front is pretty amazing. So I really think this is an elite album. Yeah. I do. I think it's an album that's slept on a little bit as a truly great album of the 90s. I think some of that is because the Downward Spiral is also an incredibly great album, and there's like a brutality and you just can't look away from it to Downward Spiral. And I also think a lot of people listen to that album at formative times of their life, so it's like imprinted on them, and I totally get it. And I can't say that this album is better than Downward Spiral. They're different, but I do think that maybe it's the length of the album or coming in the aftermath of it where, this album at the time was kind of polarizing with the listeners, right? Like, critics liked it, but the people who were Nine Inch Nails fans were of two minds of it because of the length and some of the choices. Like a lot of things, I think it's grown to be many people's favorite Nine Inch Nails album. So it's been revisited that way, but I always kind of thought, when we talk about, the great albums of the 90s, I'm kind of shocked this one is not talked about more often, because it really is like, it's in that like elite pool for me of albums in the 90s. So strong thumbs up.
Yeah, it is overshadowed a little bit by the Downward Spiral was huge. It had the, Closer and Hurt, much bigger hits, right? And maybe it was kind of, I don't know. Well, it wasn't that new because the Head Like a Hole was a pretty big hit too, but there was something about that just like really resonated. And then, this kind of like, it's not like
the lead singer of this was Starfuckers Incorporated, which you can't even say on the radio, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that, but I don't know. I'm going to have to think about this because I might like this better just from a personal, because this is the one that I was like, oh, okay, I think I like this band. I think I could get in, pick up a little bit more of what they're doing. But
also, you guys, I know you guys often listen to these albums like doing other things, and like the idea of listening to this album doing anything besides listening to this album is like, I was like, I wonder how they're pulling this off, because I just would not be able to listen to this like doing something besides listening to this.
It's definitely better. Yeah, this is, and a lot of music's probably, it's just like anything, right? If you can devote attention to something, and even songs that aren't, or albums that aren't that complicated, like I've heard plenty of times, like I can pick up way more stuff on the headphones. I'm like, oh, there's a guitar part there that I never noticed before. So I think that you can always say that it's better to do that, like totally full attention. I just don't find myself in that situation very often.
I totally get, but and I get that completely, and thus I understand why you have to do it that way. But I just laugh about, like, I'm gonna put this on while I'm cooking, or like, while I'm doing some late work. I'm like, how like you can't listen to me. You can't listen to anything besides when at most you're doing something that is like light like maybe driving if you're on an easy drive. You know what I mean? Like in the evening when there's not many cars on, or the morning, or doing some light stuff. But anything right that involves any mind space, I'm just like, how could you possibly listen to this album? And it's a testament to how good it is that you're willing to give that much time, right, to an album.
For sure.
What are we